Welcome to this live feed. Thank you so much for being here. This is something I've been giving a fair amount of thought to. The last few days I've been deep diving into this theme around our patterns, around who we are as people, around how we show up in relationship, around how we show up in the world, around what that means for us as people, and how our unconscious patterning and the way we've been conditioned and the way we've developed as young people, the way we've grown up, really deeply affects who we are. Julie, hello, how are you? Hello, everyone who's joining. Let me know how you're feeling today, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. And maybe an emoticon in the comment box. Let me know how you're feeling. This is a really important subject matter. This is so important because it really underpins how we move through the world. Hi, Billy, how are you? And how we treat ourselves and how we treat others, how we function in the world, how we view the world. Craig, welcome, brother. It's good to have you here. It's good that you're feeling great, Billy. It's fantastic that everybody is here. Thank you so much for being here. This is a very interesting topic. I'm going to hopefully unveil something of depth for you this evening. I'm sure something so many of you already know and are familiar with, but maybe I'll give you a different vantage point, different perspective, and how that then also may affect, again, your relationships, your important relationships. Raylene, how are you? So let's look at our patterns for a moment. Now, the title says our patterns are our pain. But our patterns can also be our power. What am I speaking to when I speak to our patterns? I'm referring to our patterns of behavior, the choices that we make implicitly and explicitly, so overtly and inadvertently, so consciously and unconsciously. What drives our attitudes? What drives the choices that we make? What drives us as human beings? Well, there are a number of factors, of course, but what I want to focus on today are these distinct, subtle patterns. And I want to relate this to intimacy and romantic intimacy and relationship, but not only romantic relationship, but just intimate relationship, full stop. Now, what does that mean? That means it could be platonic friendship. It could be familial relationship as well. In fact, they are the critical points of tension that we face in our lives. And of course, good evening, Emma. And of course, romantic, intimate relationship. And what this actually does for us as human beings when we are unaware of our patterns. And let's be honest, most of us are so unaware of our patterns. We have so many variables in our patterns. There is so much, there are so many layers and substructures to our patterns and how we move through the world that it becomes deeply challenging to even begin to assess who are we, to begin to assess what makes us who we are. How can we actually move through the world in such a way that allows us to have a greater awareness of our actions, of our responsibilities, of our choices, of our conscious behavior? Patterns. Our patterns are our pain. Let me deep dive into some examples. Firstly, we're prima facie beings. We're quite superficial by nature and we project and categorize. So when we're scoping our environment, when our visual cortex and our brains, good morning, Christina, how are you, my love? When we're scoping and scanning our environment and we're understanding, hello, Carol, Beverly, how are you? And we're understanding what is going on in life. We're looking at life through a biased lens. We're looking at life through a lens of survival, of course, and safety to ensure that we are safe. But we're also looking at life and we're looking at our situations and our circumstances through what we know, unconsciously and consciously, through what is familiar. What is familiar is comfortable, what is comfortable is safe. So eventually we stream back down and we lower ourselves back down to safety. We want to feel safe. We want to feel positive, healthy emotions, yeah? So let's look at this. Let's begin to assess this a little bit further. And when we're looking at life with that biased view, with the experiences that we've had and how we've interpreted those experiences in our lives, throughout our lives. And most of this is very unconscious. Most of these patterns we are not aware of. We know nothing about them. Yet they impact us so fucking profoundly. They make such a difference to who we are, the people that we attract in our lives, the scenarios that we attract in our lives, the arguments, the relationships, the context by which we live our lives. This is very interesting. So let me give you a scenario. Let me paint a picture for you, please, if I may. Imagine a couple, a young couple. They have been together for X amount of time, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, not too relevant. And in their togetherness, they decide that traditionally, Stevie, how are you? Traditionally, they want to get married. They want to play the monogamous game, and they want to be together forever, whatever forever may mean. Yeah. And in that foreverness, they spend intimate time together, and after marrying, they settle down. They settle down as in terms of they find a place, an abode, a place of safety, familiarity, somewhere where they can feel connected to each other, to themselves, to their purpose, to their lives together on this parallel path, this journey. Yeah? Not going like this, but rather going like that. And they begin to interchange. They begin to share with themselves who they are, largely unconsciously. Yes, they'll ask each other questions. Yes, they'll observe patterns. And some of the idiosyncrasies that they share, they will be okay with. They will be comfortable with. In fact, they will even find it cute, and they'll even find it appealing. They'll find it unique, blissfully unique. And after a while, that honeymoon period wears off, and we begin to broaden our scope of understanding romantic partnership, understanding our environment. We begin to see things, events, experiences, behaviours, attitudes that we didn't see before. And we then become triggered, or we become influenced, or we become intrigued. And what is actually happening, Charlene, how are you? What is actually happening is that we are being taken to our edge of what is comfortable in order to understand ourselves better, in order to equilibrate and neutralize either past trauma or unsettled circumstances, something that we haven't quite understood within ourselves. And this is the beauty of people. This is the beauty of being in a relationship, irrespective of what the relationship is like. If it's an intimate relationship, it's one that we care about. And all of a sudden, and I'll use just a traditional monogamous male-female relationship to simplify our example. And the man, he likes to sleep with the window closed at night. And the woman likes to sleep with the window open. And generally this wouldn't be a point of contention, but they begin to bicker. They begin to argue. They begin to look not deeper into the why behind this, but rather they just begin to focus on their pain of being, why am I being disrespected? Why am I not being listened to? Why is he not caring for me? Why is she not respecting me? Why are we not understanding each other? Why can't I just have the window closed? I've always had it that way. Why can I not just have the window open? I've always had it that way. And all of a sudden, these small idiosyncrasies, these nuances that appear to be very small and preferences, if you like, become massive points of contention in the relationship. And they begin to argue and clash. And why? I said earlier that we're prima facie beings. We're superficial beings. Superficial, there's no negative connotation associated to this. It's how we learn very quickly. It's how the brain compartmentalizes and categorizes. Is this safe? Is it not? Yes, it is. Continue. Is it not? Well, let's assess. Do we have to run? Do we have to fight? Do we have to freeze? What do we need to do? At a simple level, and there's layers to this, of course. So we focus on the superficial. And we don't seem to go too deep too often because it can be confronting, it can be painful, it can be difficult, and we don't know often where to start. Now, let me give you something to think about. What if for a moment that young man, the reason why he likes to have his window closed is because when he grew up as a young person, maybe he grew up in a war-torn country. Maybe he grew up in a violent neighborhood. Maybe when that window was closed, he felt safe or safer. He could hear less screaming, less gunfire. Maybe he could hear less pain and less trauma. So when he was sleeping and at his most vulnerable, he felt safer just a little bit. And what if that beautiful young lady, having the window open, gave her a sense of relief and freshness. Maybe she made associations in her life during her developmental years that having the window open, having that fresh breeze come through, she would be able to hide herself under the covers and she would feel safe and protected. And what if those people that are incessantly wanting to be early, always wanting to be early somewhere, are really just wanting to be in greater control of their environment? Because maybe when they were younger, they didn't experience control. Maybe they were out of control. And maybe they didn't have a capacity to master their own sovereignty, and that was taken away from them. So being on time and being early is a way to control the situation and control their own actions. Now, I know I'm asking a lot of people to go to this depth. I'm asking myself a lot to go to this depth. It's difficult. And it's something that is deeply, it's hitting me here and it's hitting me here, the last few days in particular. So I've been giving this so much thought and so much depth of thought. And I don't have the answers. But what I do have is an opportunity for us to explore differently the world that we are living in. And to not only view it from prima facie space, but to also view it from another place, a place of depth and richness and layers. And what if one of your unconscious agreements is after you eat at dinner at home, is actually, in fact, before you even commence dinner, is to do the dishes, to clean, to have cleanliness and space and clarity. Because maybe you lived in a home that was messy, that was violent, that was scattered, that you associated a messy place, a messy space with violence and emotional abuse, physical abuse. So you need your place clean. Maybe it's not an OCD, or maybe an OCD of some form or expression is the outcome, but it's not the cause. The cause is just wanting to feel safe and held. And the partner says, we'll do the dishes in the morning, it doesn't matter. But what if it matters to your heart? What if it matters to your unconscious self? What if it matters to your patterns? Because those patterns are entrenched in pain. And you as a partner that is experiencing that has an opportunity to say, my darling, my love, whatever endearing terms you wish to use. Of course we can clean up before we even eat. It doesn't bother me too much. Maybe that creates space and safety for that person to explore that unconscious agreement they have, to release it, to neutralize it, to let it go, to help them realize that they are safe and that these patterns of past needn't influence them today in the present, needn't be so dominant in their lives. Perhaps you're a person who loves neatness again, maybe an expression of control. Maybe you associate neatness with safety. Maybe you associate neatness with security. Maybe having that mess means that one of your parents came in fits of rage when you were younger and in their own ignorance would destroy everything in their sight. Maybe not you, but everything in their sight. And you would spend countless hours cleaning up and making sure the home was in order to ensure that there was one less thing for that angry parent or that angry primary caregiver or that out of control, ignorant, hurt primary caregiver to get upset about. Our patterns can be our pain. Our patterns can also be our power once we connect to them, once we become familiar to them, once we embody them, once we recognize them, their source, their continuity in our lives, the role that they play, how they impact and affect us, can dramatically change who we are as people. And why do we immerse in intimate relationship? Why do we immerse in romantic partnership? Well, of course, there are many reasons. It feels fucking good for starters. Physiologically, it feels amazing. Emotionally, it feels beautiful. But intimate romantic relationships do not come without their problems, puzzles, challenges, opportunities for growth. And it is in these opportunities that we recognize our patterns can be our pain, but we also simultaneously, if we're open to it, can recognize that our patterns can be our power. And when our patterns are our power, we become empowered, and we allow the other person to bring something out in us, to bring something out in themselves that triggers implicitly, unconsciously, unbeknown to us who we are, or parts of who we are. And we can address those parts with great clarity and great wisdom. And we can address those parts and come from a place of love and connectedness. And it's not without its pain, but at least this time the pain is conscious and it's not sending us crazy. Imagine for a moment that you're out to dinner with your partner or someone that you care about deeply. And you're out to dinner. Dinner is a social thing, right? We break bread, we socialize, we connect, we bond over food. It's a beautiful thing. It's an ancient cultural practice. It's one that's embedded in survival. It's one that, we developed a physiological response to eating because food was scarce at one point in time. So when we ate and we ate together, it was a fucking event. It was like, yes, another day of survival. So over time, we associate this hormonal release with eating food and bonding socially. It's a beautiful thing, yeah. So you're out to dinner and you're eating and you're with your partner's friends that you haven't quite met yet. Well, you haven't really met them. And you're not quite gelling, you're not quite connecting. You're doing more of this. And it's not obvious, but you're not feeling very comfortable. You're feeling threatened. And in that, you notice that your partner is being agreeable to the other people that you don't know, that are her friends or his friends from previous time in their lives, in their lives. And they're wanting to impress, per se. And they're wanting to impress the only way they know how, which is generally through that fear response. And attempting to, of course, or knowing somewhere within them that they've got this intimate bond and connection with you. And of course, having that intimate bond and connection with you means that they can be a little bit different, that they can push the boundaries a bit more. But to gain the acceptance and be part of the in-group that they've associated with and for so long, for so many years, and perhaps that in-group has served them in some way that has saved them from their own demise or from an environment that was unhealthy or toxic. So there's another implicit layer of explanation there or association made. And you begin to build resentment. You begin to feel inadequate. I'm speaking more to the males here, okay, more to the masculine within us even. Not even males, but the masculine within us. We're feeling threatened, we're feeling inadequate. Our self-worth is lowering. And then, depending on your personality type, you'll either slip into what we may call a dominant posture of expression, which could be aggressive, which could be very overt and confrontational, or you'll slipstream into, depending on your personality type, into a quiet, passive, resentful state, where you'll be abrupt, rude, and sharp, but not explain what is going on, because actually you don't know. And why are we feeling threatened? Why might that be the case? Because maybe your inadequacies or your perception of your inadequacies, your own self-worth, how you relate to yourself is coming through this dynamic of not being defended or not being spoken for or not being aligned with. So then you feel that you're out of the in-group and you're in the out-group and you're ostracized and you're subjugated and you're prejudiced against and you're criticized. And maybe that's a pattern that you're familiar with through schooling, through your peer groups as you were growing up, through your primary caregivers, through your father, through your mother. Now I'm speaking to something that is very common. I hope everybody is still with me. Please let me know if you're not with me. This stuff runs super deep. It runs super deep within our psyche, and it's powerful, and it makes an impact on who we are. And it impacts our relationships dramatically, and we don't even know. Now, here's the interesting part. We don't know it's there. It's implicit, it's unconscious. So how do we generally make up? We peak the experience of anger and frustration with our beloved. Some time passes. We both realize that it's an uncomfortable place to be, angry and disappointed in each other and frustrated and hating on each other. And we apologize. We don't know what we're apologizing for exactly. Our overt behavior, maybe. Our overt externalized frustrations. And we move on. But here's the thing. That pain is still there. It doesn't go anywhere. It compounds. It begins to play a role in our lives. Now, I did a thing last live feed. I put some hold music on. So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to respond to this, please, those of you that are watching. I'm going to put some hold music, and even if you're watching not live, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put some hold music on. We're going to get funky here. And I want you to really, really feel into the question I'm about to ask you. Okay, I'm going to make it really, really simple. Really simple. I'm going to start with something very simple. So where in your life, name one to three examples of where in your life you feel you express a frustration. I'm not playing Hanson again, Emma. You express a frustration with new music every time, I promise. I'm only doing this because everybody that was on most of the people that were on the live feed last time really enjoyed the hold music. 1 to 3 examples of where you become really frustrated in life and you don't know where, and you don't know why, sorry. So you become frustrated, you express this frustration however it's expressed. 1 to 3 areas, circumstances, situations, but you're not sure why, and it's a repeating pattern. And alongside that, what are one of your traits that if you could change about you, you would? Just one trait. Are you ready for the hold music? So we're going to see comments. I can't see any comments. I like that, Christina. Now the next layer of that is why. Why does that happen? And it's just an exploration, yeah? It's not about the question. It's very relevant, Raylene. What triggers us is an insight into our pain. This is why I asked the question, right? I'm going to pause this for a moment. This is really important. What triggers us, what annoys us, what frustrates us is what is relevant to our pain. Now, again, it's not about having an answer. This is not about gaining direction into an answer and having to have an answer for the question. It's about the exploration. That's the power. The power in this is the exploring. I'm going to put a post later on, similar to this, not so much on something else, but it's very interesting with respect to how we move through the world. These traits that we dislike in ourselves or in others are traits that are insight into exactly what we need to grow and break through, that pain that's holding us back. Yeah? Hello. And people who push their views upon other people, absolutely. Yeah. Controlling people, messy people also suffer from a touch of
Misophonia too. This is great. This, when we verbalize these traits or these experiences, what happens is that we gain insight into really the wholeness of who we are instead of fracturing and fragmenting ourselves. Charlene says, related to hard childhood makes me a perfectionist. So obviously Charlene's done a little bit of deeper work around that, or insight, has delved into that deeper and has made some connections there. And these connections can really be liberating. And it's not about living in the past. We don't want to do that. We want to really, the quickest way to change our space is to change our environment. And we want to really change our physiology. So, there's a reason why I'm putting this music on. It's fun. It's exciting, yeah? And I want us to make associations with what we're bringing to the surface of our consciousness with upbeat tempos, yeah? Because we end up changing our association with these negative states. Christina says, I have this thing about efficiency and getting to the point. My father was like that, I think. I think on the flip side, I need to enjoy the journey more than the destination. Many of us do, including I'm very much like that as well, something that I've been learning deeply the last few years. Carol says, people that don't actively listen, people that aren't empathetic and arrogant. Cool. For people that don't know what that is, trigger noises such as loud, misophonia, yeah. Thank you, Emma. So I've got a friend like that who hates loud chewing, hates it. In fact, he's messaging me right now, hates it. So funny. But it's not funny at the same time because there's something deep in that. And remember, what we detest in others, or what we despise or don't like in others, is a trait that we've potentially expressed ourselves in some capacity. It's really interesting to understand that we can't actually respect ourselves until we tap into our own wholeness of self. That means tapping into our sadness, tapping into our anger, tapping into our cruelty. And the power comes not in being angry all the time or being cruel, but having the ability to protect ourselves, defend ourselves, and not using that ability. Yeah? So not purposely being cruel, not being angry or violent or aberrant with intention. I'm not advocating aberrance and violence. What I'm saying is we need to come from a place that is authentic in our power and know ourselves. And this is a true definition of meekness, to have a power, but to only exert it when it's necessary. And we train to be peaceful, we train to be open and expansive in our posturing and awakened and competent. And if you have to be that person, you have access to those tools. But the only way you can be that person is to be whole in our nature, so to speak, yeah? So in that wholeness, we find ourselves and we develop a greater sense of who we are. And again, it's that physiological state change that's so important to help us break those associations that we have with our past. But it does help tremendously to verbalize and to add verbiage to these feelings that we are feeling, that we are experiencing. So when I say our patterns are our pain, they can also be our power. And where in your life, really importantly right now, where in your life can you look for these patterns in yourself and just begin to chunk them down, begin to break them down, break them up, and ask yourself, does this pattern serve me? How does it serve me? And why does it serve me? How does it play out in relationship, in intimacy, in romantic relationship? How does it serve me in that space? Because what you may find is that it doesn't serve you. And sometimes we don't need to know the why, we just need to change that state. Knowing the why can really help, depending on who you are. But not always, and it's not always necessary. At some point when you organically need to know the why, it will come. But the power is in the exploration. The power is in allowing ourselves to be present to what is unfolding, but choosing to be conscious to that. And observing our patterns and asking ourselves, where have these patterns played out in our lives, in my life before? And how are they playing out? How have they affected my life? How have they affected the lives of others? When you can notice these negative patterns, these patterns that don't serve, it's not hard, these unhealthy patterns. Where are would you find yourself bickering over something that's not important, yet you're bickering over it? Why? You're fighting for something. There's tension there, so much tension, so much resistance. Why? Where is the resistance really coming from? Is it really because you'd rather be there 5 minutes early and it's going to be the end of the world if it's not, or you really have to have this crockery set, or you really have to have this particular sofa, or you really have to have this particular material possession, or you really have to live in this place, or whatever it may be? What is driving that behavior, that stubbornness that you have that's locked in? What are the layers of patterning behind that? And that's the only question I want you to ask yourself, is why? Actually, not really the only question, I'm lying. There's plenty of questions I want you to ask yourself. But if you're here at the beginning of this live feed, those examples that I provided are really deep examples of trauma and suffering that we don't even know has occurred, and most people don't even know has occurred in their own lives, where they've experienced pain, or they've interpreted a situation or a circumstance in a way that has not allowed them to be full in their own lives, not allow them to show themselves, not allow them to be themselves, be authentic, for lack of a better term, to be integrated in integrity. And we take that suffering into our adult lives, and we take the suffering comes with the patterns. The suffering accompanies the patterns. The difficulty in relating accompanies the patterns. And those patterns set a stronghold in who we are, and they lock us down. And we need to be locked down. That's my point. We can change this physiology. We can change the way this feels. We can change our patterns of behavior. But we have to be mindful, present, conscious to all of that. We have to be aware of that unfolding and what that means for our lives, and really ask ourselves, yes, this has been with me for a long time. Yes, it's familiar. Yes, it's comfortable. Yes, it's safe. But does it serve me? Yes, Emma, we do develop these patterns as a coping strategy, and they're known as a maladaptive coping strategy. Doesn't serve us. They're not healthy coping strategies. They cause more harm than good, emotionally, psychologically, relationally, socially, all of the above, integrated and more. So we have an opportunity now. We're at the precipice as a humanity, as a collective humanity, with all the wisdom and the knowledge that we've gained over the last millions of years through our ancestors, through our animal ancestors as well, to be different, to be more connected, to look at our stuff and ourselves and ask ourselves, is this really what we want? And why am I getting so angry, uptight, disconnected from what I'm experiencing? In life, we have an opportunity in life life is abundant, and our perspective determines what is abundance. Life is beautifully abundant. But we restrict ourselves so much because we're so scared and we don't even know it. And that's where that pain is stuck in our patterns. So we have an opportunity to grow and expand as a collective, or to remain in the suffering that we find ourselves in. And it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, but the world is changing. The world is becoming more and more conscious. Massively more and more conscious. What does that mean? You're becoming more and more aware of the idiosyncrasies, the nuances, the unconscious patterns that are actually we're realizing and driving our behaviors and the way we treat each other and treat ourselves, our own sense of self-worth, our own level of experience, well-being, and so forth. Imagine for a moment just being with people that you care about and asking them real fucking questions about who they are, asking them real questions about how they move through the world, deep questions about asking them to really challenge themselves in why they do what they do and who they are, why are they who they are, and how are they who they are, getting them to think differently about who they are, and their response enlightens you. Now, I've made a commitment to myself to be like that with every person of significance that comes into my life, to get to know the substance and the richness of who they are and all the stuff that they don't even know about themselves, so that I can know that stuff about myself that I don't know about myself. And that's where we grow together as a humanity. That's where we come together as a being, as one unified being. And this isn't an abstract utopian view of the world. I promise you it's not. Beyond being naive about how we can be as a humanity, but I'm hopeful, intelligent hope, with respect to what we are capable of and tapping into our potential and actualizing it. And there are many tools out there to do this, to be this, to embody this, to feel this, experience this, express this. So many different ways. Beautiful people, I'm going to love you and leave you and say thank you so much for all of your comments, your interaction, your thoughts, your presence, your understanding, your query, your compassion, your willingness. Please feel free to share this video if it resonates. Share it privately, share it publicly. Any questions you have, lock them in the or place them in the comment box, of course. Hey Melody, how are you? I didn't realize you were here. It's a love to you. And I'll get to them, of course, if I can. Just tag me in there so I know comments come through. And many, many blessings on your journey. I hope this video has been, this live feed has been thought-provoking for you, to say the least, and has shed some light on some of those layers that are really hidden in the way we interact and behave. And we're all learning and growing. We're all learning and growing together. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful weekend, evening, wherever you are, morning, and I'll see you again very soon.